Hi everyone, Vincent here, and today we have a very special podcast because I'm joined by the brilliant Katarina Polonska. So thank you so much for joining me today, Katarina. And for any listeners who might not be aware of what you do, please could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Katarina. I'm the founder of the Successfully in Love method, and I help high-performing individuals find healthy, secure love, and people who are in a relationship create healthy, secure love in their existing relationship.
That sounds incredible. I mean, I'm a big believer that the most important part of life is relationships. You know, when all is said and done, I think that is what matters. And finding relationships which work for us, that seems to be a challenge that a lot of people have in today's society. Now, one of the main ways it seems that people try to find love nowadays is via dating apps. Although there has been a little bit of a drop off from what I can see in 2024 moving into 2025, it's still very, very popular. But there are problems with modern dating and dating apps. And what are your thoughts, Katarina, on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting, isn't it? I think dating apps have been, on the one hand, a blessing because we live in such a connected world. And I remember when I was on the apps, I made friends on the apps, even here in Vancouver, I'm, happily married, but I've got a number of male friends who I absolutely met on the apps like 7-8 years ago. And at the same time, I think that they are responsible for creating a number of problems. One being this kind of culture of making people disposable and always chasing the next high. And I do believe that we can safely say the algorithms of the dating apps are not geared at helping us find love, right? They're not geared at helping us find love. They're geared at keeping us on the app. Otherwise, how would their business model ever work? It just makes sense from a capitalist point of view. And so when we are aware of that, it becomes very clear that actually, if you think about how the algorithm's working, the people that it's putting forward, how the profiles are structured, it's not really there to help us, despite what they say. And instead it keeps us on this hamster wheel where we're kind of being dangled this carrot in front of us that, true love is around the corner, and maybe it's the next person, and maybe it's the next person, maybe it's the next person. And, I was talking to a woman yesterday at a discovery call, and she was saying how her friends, they're in their early 40s, all have this staunch belief that you have to get through 1,000 profiles to drill down to maybe 100 good leads in their words, and then from those you might have like 10 decent dates, and then from those you might have one qualified match. I'm like, that is absolutely exhausting. That's exhausting. And think about it, if you were in a bar, you'd be knackered if you tried to go through all of those people, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's just, on the one hand, it feels very efficient because sure, you can have your criteria, you can make your selections, you can kind of filter the profiles, but it's actually, from an algorithm point of view, very inefficient. And I think it's really created this culture where we have this kind of paradox of choice, but also this scarcity, because we're going through all these profiles, no one seems to be a good match. We're constantly searching for that next dopamine hit, or that next connection, that next message, that next thing, and we're just in a state of chasing, without really getting anywhere. And then even if you do get anywhere, there's actually no guarantee that it's going to last, right? I think the data out there on whether relationships on the back of dating apps lead to long-term marriages is still quite shaky. I mean, it's very early days. But, whilst I think that they're a great asset to the dating game, I really don't think that they're the be-all and end-all. I think they bring a lot of problems, and we need to be very aware of them and treat them with the care and consideration that they deserve.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have a very mixed relationship, shall we say, with dating apps. I probably had 2 or 3 main stints on them in my life. And on one hand, I would have to say they've been successful because I met the mother of my children on a dating app. Yeah. So, the lady I'm with now, my partner, we have children together from a dating app. However, to get to that point, I was on the dating apps for 3 years before I met her. So that gives an insight to it. And you touched upon throwaway culture. It's the case. I mean, we can look back a couple of generations ago, and, you know, if you had a bike which was broke, people would fix that bike. You know, nowadays people throw away the bike and buy a new one. And unfortunately, that has bled into dating. And I do feel, as you've alluded to, that we're putting too much emphasis on online dating. What would you say to someone who doesn't feel they're meeting the right person online dating? What would you say, Katarina, is a good alternative in your mind?
Yeah, I think the most important thing from everything that I teach it comes down to kind of three things. Number one, make sure that you are not blocked internally towards receiving healthy love, right? And I mean that from an attachment theory perspective. I mean that from a trauma perspective. Make sure that you've done your own inner work to clear out any of your own fears around intimacy, any of your own psychological blockers that would get in the way of you being actually attracted to healthy people. Because so much of our attraction is fueled by, you know, past traumas and unhealthy beliefs around people and stereotypes and conditioning from society or from parents, which actually doesn't really lead us to the right connection. So number one, make sure you've done that inner work. Then number two, make sure you're very, very clear on who it is that you actually need to be with. Think about your needs, right? Like when I think about my ex-fiance, who I met on a dating app, he ticked all of my boxes from an aesthetic point of view, from a career point of view, you know, kind of check, all the boxes were ticked from a very superficial point of view, but he didn't meet my needs. And, you know, not to say that we should be looking to our partners to meet all of our needs, but there needs to be some compatibility. And he wasn't meeting the kind of the deeper down, more vulnerable needs. And I probably wasn't meeting his. And then I look at my husband, who, I remember when I saw his dating profile, we met in real life, we met at a music festival, but when he showed me his dating app profile, I remember thinking, I would never have swiped on you. you don't tick any of my boxes. But fundamentally, he meets my needs and I meet his. So there's a deeper question here, right? All of the different things that we're chasing, you know, that 6'3" guy in finance, they're all proxies, and we want to make sure that we're actually going down to the deeper stuff, the more vulnerable stuff. So you want to get clarity in that, but you can't get clarity in that until you've cleared out your own blocks towards actually seeing that. So the process is twofold. And then on the third piece of the puzzle is you can't just spend your life on the apps hoping to find the right person. I mean, you can, but I imagine it would take a very long time. Like you said, 3 years, right?
Yeah.
I think with me and my ex-fiance, it took a long time as well. I think what's much more productive is that once you have clarity on what your needs are, that you start building a life that gets your needs met, right? And for me, for example, once I got real deep clarity on what my needs were, and I knew what I really loved and what like filled me with joy, and a lot of the stuff I didn't know how I was going to meet someone in that, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was just to make myself feel happy and fulfilled. And so I met my husband really quickly after calling off my first engagement, just by way of doing the inner work, getting clarity on my needs, and then getting out there and living a life that I really actually enjoyed. I still hated my job. I still wasn't happy in many areas, but I was getting my needs met. You know, I was doing the best that I could to fill my own cup. And in the process, as I'm filling my own cup and having a great time, you know, irrespective of who I meet, that's where I met my husband. And so it kind of allows for this serendipity to play into the equation. I think when you're in the right mindset, you're feeling, you know, happy, you're feeling quite free, and you're energized because you've done that inner work and you know yourself and you've put yourself into situations where you're gonna be happy. I think you're much more likely to meet someone in those conditions than just sitting, you know, on the couch, frustrated, pissed off, scrolling through the apps, feeling like it's another job that you have to do after you've had a long, horrible day at work, feeling quite irritated that it's taken so long, right?
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, when I speak to my clients, I always suggest people trying to get into a mindset of being happy, carefree, and fun. But that isn't a mindset you can fake. You know, you need to live it. And along with when I did meet my partner on a dating app, I was trying to grow my social life in a sense, as you're kind of suggesting. You know, another thing I speak to people about is joining classes, groups, and clubs. You went to a music festival, I think you said, or a gig or something, and that's wonderful. It's showcasing you have a social life to show, and that's another thing on dating apps in particular. People are always asking, well, how do I make a great dating app? Well, you need a good life first. You need a great life to show genuine feelings of who you are and what you represent. But
Absolutely.
I suppose, irrespective of whether you met on a dating app or whether you met at a music festival or whether you met wherever it may be, the next tricky element of finding a relationship is discovering whether you really are a right match for one another. Now, do you feel that people go on maybe too many dates to try to figure this out? I mean, is there a concept of maybe finding the right match in 3 dates or less?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love these for 3 dates. That is exactly what I aim for. Because, again, I'm a really big believer that when you've done that inner work, when you've primed the foundations in your own inner landscape to be able to see, connect with, and receive healthy, secure love because you're feeling healthy and secure, and you know what it is that you need on a deep down level, it is much easier to spot and to connect with that right person faster than it would be if you have no clue and all you're chasing is, looks and job status and, how near to me do they live or whatever it is that you might be looking for. I know for me, it was like, I was looking for, did they have a good university degree? Are they tall? Are they attractive? And do they seem to have a good job? And I mean, my ex-fiance had all of those things, right? Ticked all of those boxes. But the deeper stuff, did he have that? No. And then I look at my husband and it's like, well, is he that tall? No. He did have a good university degree, but when he was unemployed, and again, that has no real marker on who he is as a person. He's completely the right person for me. So all of that to say that I think you want to do that inner work and then start getting a lot of clarity once you've cut through the noise of the different blocks that you might have around what is true compatibility for you. And I think when we think about compatibility, again, we think about, job and where do they live and will it work, long distance or, are they nearby? Do they have kids? What religion are they? Do we have similar hobbies? Do we like the same music? All of these things, which, sure, are important. But there's deeper stuff. And, those deeper things are looking at, do we have the same growth mindset? Have we had similar experiences in relationships? Or maybe we both have a similar level of investment at this point. Maybe we both learned similar things and actually we can kind of tag team in our growth now. Do they have the same kind of attitude towards life? Do they have the same conscientiousness? Do they have the same morals, right? These bigger questions. And you might think that these are like heavy things to talk about, but from my perspective, your dating app profile is simply, from a business perspective, it's kind of like a lead magnet, right? Like you're basically trying to filter out the wrong people. You're not trying to get everyone in through the door because then you're going to be stuck going through 1,000 profiles. You want it to be a little bit spicy. You want it to be a little bit clear on who am I? Here's what I stand for. Here's what I stand against. Here are the things that are really, really important to me. And put vulnerable stuff. I was editing a client's profile the other day and, he had a Hinge profile and it was like, I think one of his answers was like, if you bake me cookies. And I was like, no, dude, no, this is not important. Like, it's not important unless you actually have like an addiction and a fetish for cookies. It's not important. Like, there are much more profound things that you could be putting there to push away the wrong woman. Because his problem was that he had a lot of dates and then none of them went anywhere. And I'm like, sure, it's because you're being so kind of flabby with who you're attracting. You're just attracting everyone that, you're not actually being discerning. So be clear, be specific, be bold, be vulnerable, say the scary things in your profile. And then, before you even get on that date, ask the questions when you're texting each other. Go deep. Be blunt, right?
Yeah.
The person who's serious about dating, they're not going to run. They're going to be relieved. Because I think everyone is collectively a little bit fed up with the apps, right? And then, once you've had these kind of filtering conversations, have a phone call. Don't take your time going on a date and wasting, in my case, it was like, I'd often give like 2 hours of my time on an evening, and then I was in London when I was doing a lot of dating, and, you're drinking a lot of wine, and ends up being expensive, and time-consuming, and in the end, I was like, why am I doing this? Just have a phone call. Literally have it like a 10-minute phone call to make plans on how you're meeting, hear the person's voice, hear the tonality, kind of get a sense if there's a little bit of a vibe, and then if there is, then go for an hour, right? And in that hour, just check that they look what they say they look like. have some of the kind of conversations of like, like lighter conversations, sure. But I really believe that by date 2, you can start having the deeper stuff. you can start kind of, again, vetting each other, because these fundamental traits are going to be really important. I know with my husband, for example, yes, we met at a music festival, and yes, the first meeting, was us just kind of dancing together on the dance floor, but then by the second meeting, we were, he came to my apartment, which I would never normally do, but I felt very safe with him. And we just talked about previous relationships, things that we'd learned, what we were looking for, what we wanted our lives to look like, our relationship with money. We talked about pretty big existential topics, but it meant that by the end of that second date, I knew that he was serious. He knew that I was serious. He knew that I was looking for the same things that he was. And even though he lived in a different country and we had no idea how we were going to make it work, it felt like there's enough substance here to actually pursue it further, right? And by date 3, I literally was like, okay, this guy is either someone I'm going to marry, or I'm going to marry someone like him, because it's given me a lot of good data points on the kind of person I want to be with. And I see this all the time with my clients, that when you show up to the dates more vulnerable, more ready to be real, more ready to be, quite frankly, blunt and authentic, and kind of cut the crap, you will get results much faster. Because if you're looking for love, you have to be serious about it.
Absolutely. And it's funny what you were saying, because my partner said some of the things that you just mentioned. So, for instance, she picked up on the fact that I was, in her words, very clear about what I was looking for. She was also, in her own words, impressed that I wanted to give her a call fairly quickly. Instead of just messing around messaging, I wanted to actually speak with her and actually have a conversation. So I'm picking up on what you're saying there and actually connecting it to my own experience. I also wanted to go back a few minutes to when you were talking about things which are important. And I referred to those things as deal breaker life goals. So, for instance, like you were referencing, there are things which are just nonsense, ultimately. Like, it doesn't matter if you share the same favourite movie. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But what does matter is whether you have the same opinion about having children. Because I don't care how attracted you are to one another. I don't care how much you make each other laugh. If one person wants to have a baby and the other person doesn't, this isn't going to work. Not long term. Not in my opinion. Somebody is going to have to really give up on their deal breaker life goal in that respect.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, to me, it's like I think we carry a lot of shame, a lot of fear, a lot of like, oh God, am I asking for too much? Am I going to be, am I going to seem too serious? And it's like, you don't really have time to waste, people. Life is long on the one hand, but when you're with a person that you love, like, you want to have more time with them. And again, the right person is not going to be scared away by someone who's intentional. They're just not.
Not at all. And look, the days are long, but the years are short. And I often speak with clients in a way where I'm not trying to be pessimistic or negative, but just more factual in regards to, look, in 100 years' time, me and you are not going to be here. That's the likelihood. 50 years' time, that's a debate in itself. Before you know it, you can start looking at it and say, okay, how many decades do we realistically kind of have, right? Okay, how many of those decades are we likely to be fit and healthy to be able to do the things we want to do? And then you narrow it down and you think, whoa, okay, let's start moving forward. Because if there's one thing, Katarina, that I try to really get out of people, so to speak, is procrastination. That is the thing which really is a bugbear to me, because procrastination is in essence the killer of your life, because you've got to keep moving forward.
I agree with you completely.
It's something which is very difficult when you move into a rut potentially, but you've got to try and find that way to get through it. I see myself as a coach, as a motivator, an accountability partner, and that is the type of thing I try to work with people through challenging times. But let's now think about if you were to have got into a dating pattern which was working, you was really enjoying the time you're spending with a new person, and then you start to look forwards to that relationship and it starts to blossom. What would you say about the stages of a relationship and how to actually prepare for them, if that's possible?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So I think it's really, really important that we understand that every relationship goes through different seasons, right? And I think if I'd known this, before, I mean, goodness knows who I'd be married to now. Probably be married to an ex, for crying out loud. Because I think I would understand that period where we were in, which was full of conflict and arguments and stress and crying and blah, 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 was actually a pretty normal part of every relationship. So when we think about romantic love, it tends to unfold. I mean, it will differ in terms of kind of months and timeframes based on your attachment style, based on your own unique kind of setup. Are you long distance? Are you living in the same town or city? These things are going to be important in terms of how it unfolds. But generally speaking, we start with the dating phase, which is when you're getting to know each other, you're seeing each other, you haven't really integrated into each other's lives, and you're using the dating as data gathering, quite frankly.
Yeah.
If you're more anxiously attached, you're quite likely to be already kind of jumping into honeymoon and fantasizing and future projecting and, thinking about your kids and all these things. But actually the dating phase, which can take like 2, 3, 4, even 6 months, depending on how close you are to each other. That dating phase is when you're really getting to know each other and you're gathering data and you're remaining quite neutral. You're not making any conclusions about them. You're just observing. You're just asking questions. You're getting to know them. Then you move into honeymoon phase, which is when you've already made a commitment to each other. Maybe you're going to be exclusive. Maybe you're monogamous together. You're in a relationship. And at that point, you're flooded with all the hormones. You're going through all the wonderful feelings of what it is to quote unquote be in love. You're not fully in love, let's be clear on that, but you're in that kind of infatuation stage, right? And it's lovely, and the hormones and the rose-tinted glasses, and your partner can do no wrong. And actually, it's at this stage, so many couples will get married, get engaged, have a baby, move in together, because everything's really lovely. But then what actually happens is you move into the power struggle phase. And power struggle is a really natural, healthy phase of every relationship. We all have to go through it. And power struggle is when the hormones have worn down, which they have to, and you frankly can't live in that state of being your whole life. You have to have the hormones kind of wear down a little bit to give your sanity back. Hormones wear off, things begin to settle, you get more comfortable with the person, and at that point you start to actually bring your quote-unquote true self to the table. You stop trying so hard because you feel more secure. You feel more confident that they're not going to leave you. You stop pretending. You stop kind of putting your best foot forward. You actually just relax. And at that point is when a lot of conflict tends to happen, because suddenly you're both bringing your authentic self to the table. You're both having to negotiate what it is that you actually need. Maybe you need more space. Maybe you need more time with your family. Maybe you need more intimacy. Maybe you need them to text you more. Maybe you need, whatever it might be. You need them to get a better job, like whatever it might be. But you start kind of bringing your needs to the table. And that's when it feels like, oh my goodness, who is this person? Who is this person I'm in a relationship with? They're not who I thought they were. And panic starts to hit. And we start getting into clashes, right? We start getting into conflict because we're both negotiating what it is that we actually need. And as we move into greater conflict, that's when the real kind of meat and bones of the relationship are exposed. Do you have healthy conflict management together? Do you know how to navigate boundaries? Do you know how to communicate? And because you're two new people and you're coming together, there's going to be friction, there's going to be tension, right? Because you probably don't know with each other. You might have basic skills, but as it comes to the two of you, you probably won't know. So in this power struggle phase, which can last anything from a couple of months to years, plenty of couples stay in it, you have to start to negotiate and learn, how are we going to get through this rough patch, and how are we going to come out the other side? Meaning, how are we going to learn to communicate? How are we going to learn to compromise? How are we going to learn to navigate conflict? How are we going to learn to repair? And this is interestingly where most couples break up. This is certainly where I broke up with all of my exes, because I'd get to this phase and be like, what the heck is this? This is horrible. They're clearly not right for me. Who is this horrible demon that I'm in a relationship with? I want to get away, right? And I would end the relationship. And actually, in retrospect, it's like, well, no, actually, obviously we were younger back then, but what I did with my husband, for example, is we went into the relationship, both eyes wide open. I knew a little bit more about relationships than he did because I'd been studying this, But we really kind of came to the relationship knowing that we're going to hit power struggle. We hit it pretty early on, actually. We hit it, like, I think 6 months in.
Okay.
And I remember when we had our first conflict, I was like, oh boy, here we go. We're entering it. And I think it lasted for, a good, probably 2 years, if I'm honest. It wasn't cataclysmic. I mean, there were some horrific arguments where we did think we'd, break up, and we both had a lot of fear. But fundamentally, we knew that it boils down to, right, we need to learn healthy conflict. We need to learn how to communicate. We need to learn conflict resolution. We need to get really clear on our needs. We need to find some compromises. And then once you got through that phase, you move into the kind of stability phase where things are a little bit more stable, a little bit more calm, and, it's feeling a bit better. And then you deepen into this kind of second round of honeymoon, which, some call the bliss stage. And that's when it's like you're authentic, you're yourself, you're getting your needs met. You don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to role play anymore. You are just safe being yourself, happily in love with your partner who understands you understand them, and you are in this whole nother level of honeymoon, which is truly, truly wonderful. And so that's kind of the phases. But to be clear, like, you can go back into power struggle. When you have kids, you're very likely to go back into power struggle because suddenly negotiating, how do you raise the kids? What are the boundaries? What is your parenting style, right? Like, my husband and I moved countries, went back into power struggle, right? Very briefly, because it's like, oh, now we're in a new place, and how we're going to navigate this, and what is our new routine like? What is our schedule? He's doing the groceries. Like, these things come up. It's not terminal, though. As long as you can see it for what it is and understand that there's a point to this phase, and the point is to learn and to grow and to get better, then it doesn't have to be scary.
And I think that also links into the whole concept of throwaway culture, because whereas arguably, I don't have stats to hand, but arguably in the past, it certainly seemed as though people worked on their relationships more. Nowadays people are like, oh, that's not working, right? That's it. And I think when you're talking about the power struggle, it's the concept of we can only act for so long. When you meet someone, you have to show your true self. And presumably, when you are both showing your true selves, that is when, I'm guessing, power struggle perhaps first shows. Would I be right on that, in your opinion? When you're first showing yourselves, Yeah,
I completely agree.
It's a difficult time, but if you understand it as you've described, then this is something which can be about growth. And at the end of the day, when I'm giving breakup coaching, unfortunately, seeing people growing in different directions, or one person growing and one person stagnating, is very common. So it's so important to have aligned goals. You don't have to be the same person. Look, you have to stay two individuals working together as a team. That's as I see it. Unfortunately, you'll sometimes see a couple and they've literally grown into one person. They almost look like the same person. They dress the same. They almost look the same. And you just wonder, how that relationship might be ticking over. So what would you say is the behavioural science of attraction, Katarina?
The science of attraction is a good question. I think when I think about attraction, it's so often we think about it as being a, purely heart-driven thing, and it's kind of this mysterious force where we don't really know where it comes from, and you get this like infatuation with someone, and you can't wait to be with them, and you want to tear their clothes off, and it's like, this very strong feeling. To me, that's almost a bit of an indicator of a bit of a red flag, because actually attraction is so much more than just the physical attributes of a person. To me, it's, how safe do you feel in their presence? How much do you trust them? How much can you rely on them and depend on them? How much do you know about them, right? And it's almost kind of like this, not a matrix, but there's like a process that we go through that builds attraction. And really, you don't want to start with a 10 out of 10, because when you start with a 10 out of 10 and you barely know the person, you can be pretty confident that you're going to be making a lot of projections, a lot of assumptions. You're going to be telling a lot of stories about who this person is, and a lot of fantasies that probably aren't actually grounded in reality. So if you suddenly have this like huge crush, and this person seems like the person, and you're like, oh my god, I think I found the one, but you actually don't know them very well. You've not been with them for 3 months plus. You haven't seen them go through a crisis. then you're projecting, you're making assumptions about them. And those assumptions are going to be coming from stories from your past, based on who your parents were, based on your upbringing, based on your conditioning, based on what you believe them to be. Doesn't mean that that's what they are, right? Real attraction is a much slower, steadier, calmer process of discernment, of knowledge, of building trust, of spending time with them, of really kind of gradually beginning to open yourself and open yourself to who they are as they open to you. And so I always say, if you're feeling a 10 out of 10, be a little bit suspicious of that, because no one really can be a 10 out of 10 before you really know them, right? If you're feeling like a 6 out of 10 or even a 5 out of 10, you're curious about them, something about them intrigues you, you feel kind of safe with them, you feel good in their presence, and you want to spend more time with them, you want to get to know them more, but it's not like a crazy insatiable desire, then I think you have something good to work with. You have something that's telling you that this person feels stable, this person feels safe, this person's kind of piquing my interest, and I want to get to know them more, and I'm going to give it more time, and I'm going to get more data points from them. I'm going to educate myself on who they are and let them reveal themselves to me, right? And it's just a much steadier process, and we have to engage our head as much as we engage our heart and body, because our head is going to be the thing that's going to be discerning the data points that we need to take into very real consideration to what you were saying about kids and non-negotiables, rather than just pure instinct and desire.
I think that's really, really well put. I mean, I have a concept where I believe in sexual polarity. I believe in the masculine and the feminine. And, even in a homosexual relationship, you can often say, okay, there's two men here in a homosexual relationship, but one is more in their masculine and one is more in their feminine. The yin and the yang, from what I can see, tends to yield the most successful relationships. And over the years, I've been doing this job since 2018. I've spoke to hundreds of people and just noticing trends, etc. There's definite trends, but most women are looking for what we would call traditional masculine traits, and most men are looking for what we would call traditional feminine traits. Now, that's not everybody, it's not one size fits all, but generally speaking, that is something that I believe in. How do you feel about that, Katarina?
Yeah, I mean, I have a master's degree in this, so I know a lot about the topic, and I would agree with you. I think that there is absolutely a polarity, but I think that the problem that we run into in our society and in our kind of culture is that when we think about the polarity energies, that kind of the masculine energy, the feminine energy, the yin and the yang, we have falsely attributed those to our gender, right, to our gender identity. And that's really a symptom of the English language not having enough vocabulary. You go to other cultures, they don't necessarily prescribe feminine energy to women, right? That's very binary, very limited. My philosophy is that we absolutely have both energies within us. I am, a straight heterosexual woman, and I have masculine energy within me. I have feminine energy within me. And I need both to be balanced, to be stable, to be whole, to be fully functioning. Now, when I'm in a relationship with my husband and I am wanting to create more polarity and more kind of playful tension and more attraction and more desire, yes, I want to harness the kind of magnetic potential of these energies, and maybe I lean into one of them. I could very well lean into my masculine energy if I wanted to, if he wanted to lean into his feminine. It doesn't really mean anything, right? It doesn't mean that he's going to become a woman or anything. It just means that he's going to be leaning into that energy, which is where role play or, kind of the different kind of sexual dynamics can play out. More likely than not, and this is partly out of conditioning, I'm going to lean into my more feminine energy and he's going to lean into his more masculine energy because of the way that society has attributed these gendered, these kind of energies into gendered identities. But it just means that we're going to kind of play with the different extremes. And that's great. That creates polarity, that creates attraction. And to me, that's the icing on the cake. Beneath that all, to have the foundation of a healthy, secure relationship, you need to have both, meaning I personally believe that I have to be balanced in my masculine and feminine. If I'm too much in my feminine energy all day, every day with him, then I'm not going to have much structure. I'm not going to have much stability, which is really what the masculine energy is associated with. I'm not going to have much discipline. I'm frankly not going to get much done. And I'm going to be more that kind of chaotic, emotional, fluid energy, which sure can be great. I personally don't think that would serve me as a sovereign woman very well if I'm trying to get out there and build my business, serve clients, be there for family members, be there for my friends. We need both, right? In the same vein that if my husband was to be purely in his masculine energy and completely shut off his feminine energy, he wouldn't have any capacity for emotion. He wouldn't have any capacity for compassion, for those kind of deeper realms of feeling, right? Mm-hmm. He'd be pure consciousness. He'd be pure stability. He'd be pure being. And so I think it's such a complex topic that I think really has been oversimplified a lot in pop culture. And I think when it comes to sexual attraction, sexual polarity, and building desire, we absolutely want to harness the power of polarity. We absolutely want to kind of bring in these differences between us and play with the energies and have fun with them and role reverse them and bring a range to them. And when it comes to having a healthy, secure dynamic, we both want to be sovereign, responsible, balanced human beings who are able to take care of ourselves so that we're not dumping onto each other and so that we're not codependent, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's really important what you touched on there, that we all are a combination of both the masculine and the feminine, to differing degrees. Obviously, there are an infinite amount of traits that you could theoretically think about someone and kind of say, okay, they're more masculine in that way, more feminine. But it is something which can be fluid and can be expressed. And I do think it is fascinating in regards of, even if, for instance, you said, for instance, maybe you move into your masculine at some points, that the polarity would probably best match if at that stage your husband was to move into his feminine. Now, it doesn't mean you have to stick there, but it's interesting that it's almost like the seesaw effect of what almost seems to best fit. From what I have seen, at least, I don't know whether you would agree or not so much, but from what I have seen, if two people are in the same mindset, so to speak, so somebody is in their masculine, their partner is in their masculine, and that's pretty much where they stick, that is where there seems to be problems. Similar with the feminine. Yeah. It always seems to work best for me if there is one way or the other, a polarity and a kind of, like I described, like a seesaw effect.
Yeah, I think when you're speaking to attraction specifically, yes. I think in a long-term, healthy, secure, happy marriage, my personal philosophy is we need to have both. I need to know that my husband is capable of being in his masculine as much as his feminine, so that I need him to be that, right? I need him to have that emotional range. I need him to have that creativity. He needs that for his own business, for his own growth. I need to have a ton of masculine energy if I'm going to build and scale a successful business where I'm holding money, I'm holding clients' emotions, I'm holding so much structure. I need it in order to scale. And then I need my feminine energy so that when I am able to listen to clients and I'm able to serve them and be compassionate and open my heart to them, I need that, but I need the masculine structure. In the same vein, with my husband, I need masculine structure to be able to shop and be disciplined with him, to do our relationship practices, to be able to honor the time that we've set aside for intimacy, to be able to honor the way that we manage our finances, to be able to honor the fact that sometimes I'm going to have to cook dinner and sometimes he's going to cook dinner, and these kind of structured aspects we both need. He needs me to have my healthy masculine so that I can help manage the household finances. I personally wouldn't want to be in a dynamic where I'm purely in my feminine all day, because to me that feels very codependent if I'm then just needing him for that structure and stability. And for him, I wrote my thesis on disenfranchised masculinity and how masculinity has become this very two-dimensional kind of binary identity where men really are starved of emotion. They're starved of their own internal feminine. They're kind of chopped off from it. And that doesn't make a healthy, conscious man. True conscious masculinity in a gendered dynamic is a blend of masculine and feminine energies. And he can harness his own masculine energy when he wants to bring that sexual polarity, when he wants to bring that kind of fierce manhood, absolutely. And he might lean towards that more. Maybe there's like a 60-40 split. But he still needs to have his integrated feminine. Without the integrated feminine, he's not an integrated whole human being. So I really think that you kind of need to have both. And I would agree that if you are both very much in your masculine energies, only masculine energies, then there's going to be a clashing of heads, right? It's not going to work. But you need to both be balanced and be able to kind of dance this fluid dance where you're alternating, where you're shifting, where you're, my husband was sick the other day. He had the flu. So he's in his feminine energy because he's got the flu. He's tired. He needs to rest. So I have to lean into my masculine energy to provide the structure, to provide the stability, to provide the care, right? Then I also need to be able to lean into my feminine energy to be able to provide the love and the compassion and the nurture. So it's this kind of constant ongoing dance between the two energies that we all have within us. We all have to be doing every single day. And the real skill is being able to kind of switch between the two and bring whichever one is required for in that moment. So in the bedroom, you might need a very different energy to what you need when you're at work, right?
Oh, yeah. It's often the case that you find people are very much more comfortable behind closed doors in a completely different position to how they would be out in, quote unquote, the real world. And I think what you're describing there so eloquently, I must say, and so brilliantly, is that a lot of our relationships are within our mindset. And I think the subconscious mind has so much untapped importance. A lot of the time, most of us probably don't even know what's going off there. How would you say the subconscious mind shapes our love life?
Yeah, so our subconscious mind runs 95 to 97% of our reality. It is, hands down the most important part of our brain, I would say, because it's really where all of our past experiences, all of our traumas, all of our identity really lives. Our beliefs about ourselves, the patterns that we see play out, our behaviors, our mindset. And so your subconscious is extremely responsible for your outcomes in your love life. And therefore, the most important work I would say that you can do is to work on your subconscious mind, work on your beliefs, work on your thought patterns, work on your projections, work on how you see the world, work on your filters of how you perceive things. And this is where your attachment wounds will live. This is, again, where any kind of the power struggle aspects that you might run into live. It's just such a crucial part of your dating reality, your relationship reality. For example, every conflict that we have in our relationships, you can bet that your subconscious is, bringing up a lot of stuff there and projecting it and dumping it. And it's really responsible for a lot of the kind of misunderstandings that we have. Now, the problem is that a lot of therapy, traditional coaching, uses a lot of talking, a lot of asking of questions, a lot of being very rational, a lot of thinking. And a lot of that is only using your conscious mind, which is like that 3 to 5% of your brain. So you can already see that trying to have discipline or willpower or think through something or process something on a rational level isn't really going to get you very far. And I know for me, I spent 15 years in therapy. It was great for building my awareness. It was great for having the conversation with me and kind of helping me understand things. But the real deep shifts started when I started harnessing the subconscious mind and really looking at what is my wiring, what is my conditioning, how am I showing up, what is the substance of what I bring to the table in a relationship, and how can I actually clean that out and make sure that I'm showing up as secure and healthy as I can, and really take accountability and ownership for those different blocks that might be showing up, the fears of intimacy, the fears of being trapped, the fears of being abandoned, whatever it might be. And so subconscious mind work has been absolutely crucial for growth.
That is so powerful, and for anybody listening who was wondering, what percentages and whatnot can be playing out in our love life for our mindset. I mean, hearing you being able to explain that is so useful, because many people go about their daily life and they don't really know what's going on. They know kind of how they feel, but don't understand why. And having you be able to explain this is very, very helpful to all of the audience. I want to say thank you so much on behalf of everybody listening and myself for all the insights you've given us, Katarina. I mean, is there anything else you would like to add about yourself and what you do? And also, more importantly, if people want to follow your socials or contact you for your coaching or services or support, I mean, what would you like to to say about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I help people become securely attached. I help people clear through all of those different blocks that they will have when it comes to love. And I'll help you find love if that's what you want to do. And if you're in a relationship, I will help you discern whether it's the right relationship for you, whether you should stay or go, and how to improve it, how to get that connection, freedom, love, trust, and intimacy that you deserve. And then the ways that I do that is through my methodology, the Successfully in Love method. It's a 12-stage methodology, and it typically takes kind of like 3 months to 6 months to work through. I work with people both one-on-one and in the group format. And if you want to learn more about how that methodology works, you can watch a 20-minute masterclass on my website. It's it's short, it's sweet, it's full of information, full of really useful theory and science and how it all works and how it all kind of comes together. You can see that on my website, www.katarinapolonska.com. And then I also have a shorter little video that you can see on my LinkedIn. It's also on my website as well in the relationship section, where I share a little bit more about, what it's like to work with on a practical level. Like, what do we actually do and how does it actually come to life? There's kind of two things there that you can dive into. And then find me on LinkedIn. I post so much content, so much kind of strategy and things that people might be doing that maybe isn't working for them on my LinkedIn, like pretty much daily. So if you want to learn more kind of passively, then definitely connect with me there and just read and enjoy and start a conversation.
That's brilliant. And what I'm going to do is put all of those links in the description, so anybody who wants to contact Katarina or see those socials, etc., and learn more, watch the 20-minute 3 masterclass I think Katarina just described. All of those links I'm going to put in the description, because this has been an absolute pleasure of having you on the podcast today, Katarina. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been absolutely lovely.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please let me know in the comments what you think. Thank you once again to Katarina. Thank you, everybody, and take care.